So next week marks the 1 year anniversary of the Republican tax cuts for the rich. Now, in it, of course, they made a lot of cuts to individual rates, as well as, in some cases, even raised some people's taxes by taking away certain deductions. But mainly, they cut corporate taxes for corporations by quite a bit, from 35 to 21%. So that's a significant tax cut. And so, well, now they have all these earnings. Now, when Trump signed that bill, he said, "No, this is going to be tremendous for all Americans. We're going to be swimming in jobs. The economy is going to be fantastic." And so, hey, look, great. Cut taxes for the rich and cut taxes for regular Americans. Not necessarily true. I'll get into the numbers in that. Now, he also claimed that even before he signed the tax cuts, that corporations were giving billions and billions of dollars away to their workers. Now, was that true? No, it was obviously not true. But again, let's look at the numbers objectively. Okay, so look, here are the claims, right? Trump says, oh, the economy is going to be fantastic, so we passed the tax cuts. Is it fantastic? Well, let's take a look. According to statistics from the Economic Policy Institute, in the past 12 months, cash bonuses, right? So this is another thing that was promised. We give corporations these tax cuts, well, then they're going to shower bonuses on their workers, right? Cash bonuses only gave workers an additional 2 cents within their hourly compensation. That is adjusted for inflation. So all $1.5 trillion in these tax cuts ended up netting average workers an extra 2 cents. Wow. So let's dive into the numbers for a little bit more detail. Now, according to one analysis, only about 4.4% of U.S. workers got a wage increase or bonus as a result of the tax bill. So 96% of workers didn't see any benefit. No pay increase, no bonus. Very, very small amount of Americans got some sort of benefit, at least American workers. But now, of course, the top 1% and these corporations, well, they basically made 100% of the benefit. Now, where did that money go, right? The rest of that money, well, as I just told you, it went right back to the rich. Now, U.S. corporations, it turns out, they have announced spending $1 trillion on stock buybacks so far this year. That was a 64% increase from 2017. So obviously they got a lot of money back and they are certainly using it. Now, that money went to executive compensation. So that's stock buybacks, as I said before. What happens is they basically inflate the value of their own stock and then they cash out. They take that money and then they run. That's what happens. And of course, the higher your stock value is, since most executive compensation is tied up in stock prices, the higher it goes, the more they make. That also has the unfortunate impact, or I should say effect, of creating a bubble. What happens when there's a bubble? Well, it bursts. So now, look, you could look at that and say, well, okay, maybe they don't know that what they're doing is creating a bubble. Pretty sure they do know. I'm pretty sure also that they don't care because they're making a ton of money. A ton of money. Now, what about wage growth? Now, there's another thing, right? So people who defend the president, defend the economy, say, well, unemployment is really, really low, right? Unemployment is so low, and that's true. Unemployment has hit lows. And so there are a lot of jobs. Now, historically, when wages hit such a low level, or I'm sorry, not wages, but employment, or I should say unemployment hits such a low level, wages start to rise because there gets to be more of a demand in workers, right? So have we seen that? Have we seen an increase in wages since these tax cuts were passed into law? Well, yes and no. So let me get into the numbers on that. The EPA found that in the last 12 months, average hourly earnings have increased but have only increased a total of 81 cents. That is 3.1%, according to the Labor Department. Now, look, to be honest, that's the biggest increase since 2008. That's really sad, actually. So even back during the Obama years, you had wage stagnation. And 2008 was right before the crash, by the way. And so wages only had this much of an increase back then, nearly a decade ago. And it's only 81 cents. Now, it gets worse though. When taking the 2.2% inflation rate into account, workers' wages actually grew only about 0.9% within the past year. So that is less than 1% wage growth when taking inflation into account. So are wages rising? No, they are still stagnant despite the promise of, oh, well, obviously you give tax cuts to corporations, and they're going to give you a bonus. They're going to give you a raise. Well, it didn't give you a raise, and the bonus was about equal on average to an extra 2 cents. And so while you're getting that, while you're reaping those rewards as a worker, here you had the 1% that got an average tax cut of somewhere to $30,000 to $60,000 a year. And they're going to save billions. So understand that while you are struggling and you are still making basically less than you did before, or than someone working the same amount of hours in the 1960s, understand that all that money went up for the rich. It went right into their pockets. And if you're doing well, then, well, that's great, but you're either likely somebody who already is wealthy, and if you're not, and if you are still doing well, understand that these tax cuts likely had little to do with how well you're doing. But understand that the impact of those tax cuts later on will come back to bite us. And so that's the truth about the Trump tax cuts nearly a year after they were signed into law. They're not good for America, they're not good for the economy, and they're definitely not good for the worker. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.